Hello friends. When I do the YouTube, sometimes I'm focused on educating you. Occasionally I'd like to entertain you, sometimes merely to inform you. But always I hope it's something that leaves you with a thought that will come one day in use, something beneficial. And in that spirit, I offer the following story. It is a story/legend that is attributed to King Solomon some 2,600 years ago. And without any further ado, I present to you the story. In those days, there was a village where there lived many people, and let's arbitrarily call X, Y, and Z. Three different individuals decided that they would try their hand at commerce. Each one would contribute perhaps 100 shekels, and their combined sum would allow them to buy and sell, and they decided that this is a very good business proposition, so they went. They had not known each other intimately. They knew of each other. They were all religious Jews, and they were surprisingly getting along very well with one another. Every day they would meet together, and they would count up the profits of the day, and they would mark it down on a piece of paper and how much they spent and how much came in, and things were fine. And this went Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, until Friday came, and they found themselves in a strange village, and they realized, what should they do with this money over the Sabbath? They didn't know anyone in the village. They weren't sure who they could trust. So they decided the smartest thing would be to come into the village, spend the Shabbat there, but not advertise that they have wealth with them. So they took their shekels and they all went for a walk in the forest, chose a rock, they made a hole, they deposited their shekels, they all solemnly shook hands and said that on Sunday morning, all of us three together will come and take out the shekels, and we will continue another successful day, a week of business. Well, they had a wonderful Shabbos, and on Sunday morning at the designated time, all three show up, and they move away the rock, and the hole is empty, the shekels are gone, and they look at each other, and three fingers immediately are pointed at one another. You took it, you took it, you took it. And of course, each one vehemently says, what, me? God forbid, I would never do something like that. We're partners. It's counterproductive. I gave you my word. Each one is holier than thou. It must have been a stranger. It must have been, but that was so far-fetched. Who would suddenly go into the forest and happen to find their thing? So they basically, the three, X, Y, and Z, felt very uncomfortable with one another. And they came to the rabbi of the city or the village, and they said, Rabbi, we'd like you to figure this out. Which one of us is the thief? And of course, each one says, it's not me. The rabbi looks at them, he says, I'm not a prophet. How would I know? I was not there. There are no eyewitnesses. And each one of you claims that you didn't. Maybe it's true that you didn't take it and someone else took it. And they were not satisfied. They said, Rabbi, do you have any advice for us? He says, well, for this you need divine wisdom of a very high level. Why don't you travel to Jerusalem? There is a king. His name is Shlomo, King Solomon. He's reputed to be the wisest of all men. And perhaps he could figure out a way to figure out which one of the three is actually guilty. Well, they looked at each other, and the thief, thinking to himself, there's absolutely no way anyone could prove it, said, sure, let's go. And they go to Jerusalem, and they manage to get themselves an audience with the king. They all begin speaking together, and of course, King Solomon says to the middle one, Mr. Y, maybe you should tell us what happened, and he gives over the story, and he says, Your Majesty, each one of my partners is accusing me. I accuse my two partners. Could the king, in his godly wisdom, tell us and prove to us which one of us three is lying? This was a mystery. And all of the king's advisors, having full confidence in their sovereign, King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, who had divine wisdom, were shrugging their shoulders. How in the world will the king be able to figure this out? 3 strangers. He doesn't know any one of the 3. How could he know? The king thought for a moment, and he said, you know, you ask me to help you, but people think that a king knows everything. I've actually had a story come to me, and I am a little perplexed. And perhaps, looking at you 3 gentlemen, 3 business people, maybe collectively you could help me. So hear me out and listen to the following. And he tells them a story. He says there was once a 12-year-old girl went to bring water to her family. So she went to the well to fetch the water, and the bucket was all the way on the bottom of the well. She tried to lift it with the rope, and it was not exactly easily coming up. So she bent over to see what was hampering the bucket from coming up. And something very unusual happened. She seemed to put her head too deep into the well, and she actually fell into the well. Though it was a good number of feet, she was very fortunate. She landed feet first in the bucket, which went into the water, and though she was wet and a bit frightened, she was not hurt. But now she has a problem, and that is, it is cold, and when will the next person come? And obviously, if she doesn't keep her hands out, holding on to both sides of the walls of the well, eventually she'll sink into the water. So she began shouting, "Help! Help! Is there anyone out there? Is there anyone out there?" And to her credit, her voice carried, and right outside the well was a shepherd boy who was shepherding his sheep, heard a voice, and quickly ran to the well and shouted, "Is there someone down there? Yes, please get me out." Well, this boy exerted all of his effort and was able to lift the bucket with this charming girl inside of it. She comes out and, shaken from the experience, and realizes that this strange boy saved her life. And in her enthusiasm, she says, "Oi, you saved my life. You're my savior. What can I give you? How can I thank you? How can I show my appreciation?" He looks at her with a smile. He says, "I don't know who you are, but you're a female and beautiful. So promise me one day we'll get married." She says, "Oh, I promise." And they bow to each other. And she goes home. And he continues on his merry way. Well, years pass. And the young lady now is 16 years old. And she has suitors. And there's a very fine man who's interested in her. And they get to know each other and the family. And he says to the young lady, "I would like very much to marry you." And she says, "I'm so glad you said that, because that mirrors my feelings. I'm enamored with you, and I would consider it a privilege to be your wife, but I have one major issue that's stopping me from saying yes." "What is that?" She says, "When I was a young girl at 12, someone saved my life, and I promised that I would marry him." So the suitor says to the young lady, "You're just a kid, and the boy was just a kid. I mean, do you really think that he took your promise seriously? And now, knowing what you know about life, would you have made such a promise?" She said, "Well, I would not have made such a promise, but I did at that time, and I was sincere at that time. And I really don't know what the boy was thinking. How can I marry you with a clean conscience, thinking that there's a young man who still believes that one day I will come and be his wife?" So he's amazed at her loyalty, and his admiration for his would-be wife grows, and he says, "Well, what can we do?" She says, "I have a very great favor to ask of you. though we're not married, husband and wife, I'd like you to give me a gift of 500 shekels. I know it's a lot of money, but it's my happiness. And I will go to find this young man, and I will offer him the 500 shekels for him to release me of the promise. Without any hesitation, he said, I will do so. And he gives her the 500 shekels, and she is on her way. She remembers vaguely the village, so she walks a day or two to the village, and she starts asking about a young man who used to be a shepherd. And for a while, it's hard for the people to answer which young man or what did he look like, and until someone says, yeah, I know him, but he doesn't live here anymore. He's moved a couple of years ago, and I believe he's somewhere up north. So this young lady takes her 500 shekels, and what she does is she travels for close to a week until she comes to the new village. Once she's there, she asks around, and she's directed to a small house, more of a shack than a house, and she's told that the young man is there. She goes to the house, knocks on the door, and a fine young man, dressed actually in tatters, opens up the door, sees the young lady and says, yes. And she looks at him, she says, do you recognize me? And he says, no, I don't. Do I know you? She says, yes, we've met very briefly. So he shrugs his shoulders, young lady, I don't know who you are. How can I help you? She said, well, you could give me my happiness. He takes a step back. Are you well? I've never seen you before. How can I give you happiness? She said, let me remind you of a story. One day, there was a young girl stuck in a well, and a young man happened to hear her voice, and with great exertion, managed to save her. Oh, I remember that. Well, I'm that young lady. Well, how nice. Why did you come to me, though? She says, why did I come to you? Don't you remember the promise I made? No. I made you a promise. I would marry you. He looks at her. Me? I have nothing to offer. I'm poverty-stricken. So she said, I have 500 shekels. I'm going to ask you for a very great favor. Please do me the honor and the favor of taking the shekels and release me of the oath. And he looks at her and says, I don't understand. Why do you need me to do anything? And she says, well, I'm engaged. I would like to be engaged, but I cannot continue with this man if I know that I gave you my word. And this boy is just looking at the young lady in amazement and says, you know, you are so loyal and honest. I mean, I never took it seriously. Sure, I release you. Please go and get married and be happy. Your happiness would make me happy. So she says, here's the money, thank you. And he says, here's the money? I won't steal money from a young lady who's getting married. Please consider it a gift. Take it back. And after insisting, she leaves, and she leaves happy with a clean heart. She kept her word, and the man released her, and now she's ready to start her life with her beloved, and she even has that amount of money with her to help start the household. Well, in her exuberance, perhaps she wasn't as careful as she might have been, and one of the days of her traveling, she takes a shortcut, and when she's in the middle of the path, a bandit, simply put, a bad man, grabs her. And before she knows it, she's tied up. And he says, ha, you are mine. I will take you and the money. And she says, please, let me go. Let me go. And he says, why should I let you go? She says, well, I have 500 shekels. Take the 500 shekels and let me go. He laughs. Why should I take the 500 shekels and let you go? I could take both of you, the money and the girl. And she realized that she had to fight for her life. So she said, before you do that, I want you to listen to something very carefully. And she tells him a story of how she had been in a well, a stranger saved her, how she promised to marry him, how she brought him 500 shekels, and that noble man who could have rightfully have said, oh yes, I remember that promise, and you have to marry me, which of course would mean as well as the money. Not only did he release me from my promise because he wanted my happiness, but he refused to take the money because he was concerned about my happiness. How dare you? How dare you try to ruin my life, my happiness, my future? You know, no one had spoken to him like that for a very long time, and he was really taken aback. He thought for a moment, took out a knife, cut the ropes, said, go, and gave her back the money, and said, though I am corrupt, I too appreciate nobility of spirit. I will be as noble as that young man who let you go with your money. And she left. And the three businessmen are listening to the king tell the story. And now the king says to them, my dear friends, this story was told to me, and I was asked to pass judgment. Which one of these three characters is the most noble? Was it the girl who kept a promise at great expense? Was it the young man who released her from the promise and gave her back the money? Or was it perhaps the robber who could have taken both and gave up both? X thinks for a moment. He says, Your Majesty, I believe it was the young man. I mean, it was very clear that he was poor. It was equally clear that he wasn't married, and his prospects probably were not good. He could have seen this as divine orchestration. A young lady who has money, who wants to marry him. But he knew and felt instinctively that that wasn't right, because it was his happiness that he was thinking and not hers. I think he deserves the most credit for putting the young lady's future before his own. And Y says, Your Majesty, actually, I think it's the young lady. I mean, she said something. So what? We all say things. She didn't really mean it. She didn't even know what she was saying. And besides, no one was looking for her. And yet she felt an obligation to honor her words. And not only that, she was actually willing to pay a large sum of money. She deserves the credit. And the king says to the next one, Z, and what do you say? He says, well, I'll tell you the truth. I believe it's the robber. I mean, he was a thief. And he could have taken the money and the girl. And for him to go against his nature, I think he deserves the most credit. And as soon as he said that, the king glared at him and said, You are a thief! Z turns pale. Why do you say that? You are a thief. Admit. If you do not admit, I will have my soldiers beat you. Your Majesty, you're right. I am the thief. I couldn't stop myself. Please forgive me. And they resolved it. Later on, the advisors of the king asked, Your Majesty, how did you know it was him? He says, because when X and Y focused on the nobility of a good person, Z could only see the allure and the glitter of the gold. And for someone to give that up for him was very impressive. I truly felt that this guy is attracted to the illicit and to the illegal. It's only a story, my friends. think about this story. It might come in handy one day. Listen to what people think. Listen to who their heroes are. Listen to what they consider is fine and refined. If you ever meet a person who seems to either glorify or be obsessed or spend an inordinate amount of time talking about something which is truly not right, something which is negative, file it away. Maybe through his speech, he's revealing something about his character. A story? Only a story. A tidbit of information? Yes. For us, we have to understand that when we speak, we reveal our insight. And that's why, just to cover all bases, say your prayers. Talk good. Acknowledge fine people. Adopt heroes of spirit, not of Hollywood. When we will talk about these type of people, we actually show what we admire. And when we actually show what we admire, we then become inspirational figures for others. So shalom, and may we meet again in good health.